Now I think it's a good time to go on and talk about the other section of the chapter where James briefly touches, he says briefly because he has a whole chapter on it, but briefly touches on his theory of truth. For James, what is a truth? Well, for James, truth is something that works. It is, as he puts it, ideas which themselves are but parts of our experience become true just insofar as they help us get into satisfactory relation with other parts of our experience. Any idea upon which we can ride, so to speak, any idea that will carry us prosperously from any one part of our experience to any other part, linking things satisfactorily, working securely, simplifying, saving labor, is true for just so much, true in so far forth, true instrumentally. End of quote. So becoming true for James means that it is working. It is playing a role in our experience. So for James, we typically think of an idea or a concept of being true as somehow mapping onto the world or mapping onto a realm of forms or something static. Truth for James is not a static and fixed relationship between two things. It's the name of a belief or idea that functions in a certain way, in a satisfying way. Right? Truth is that which moves or carries us successfully. You might think of this as coming from Peirce, right? Moving from doubt to belief through inquiry. They have slightly different theories of truth, but that idea of carrying us forward is there in both of us. So pragmatism gets rid of absolute or objective truths. It adopts the more ordinary language use of truth as something which can be more or less, right? There you can have more or less true things. Truth is no longer just a binary choice, right? It's either true or it's false. Truths can have varying strengths depending on how well they take us to where we want to be, to where we need to be, out of a problem or towards something we truly desire. So true enough, right? We might say in ordinary speech. So for James, truth is the marrying with old opinions, right? And truth is something which is something we're actually much more conservative about than many of James's critics would have believed. True ideas not only help us where we want to go, they make a new situation comprehensible. And the way they do this is by fitting or marrying our new experience with beliefs that we already hold. There are two conditions noted in James, two conditions to which a true idea must live up to. They must minimally disturb our existing stock of beliefs, and you could abbreviate this as CMD, condition of minimum disturbance, and they also help us assimilate what's new or what's novel, and you could abbreviate this as CAN, right? Condition of the assimilation of the novel. So a true belief meets the condition of CMD if it makes us change as few of our other beliefs as possible, right? If someone asks you to believe something new and something pretty different, like there are ghosts in this room right now, you would have to change a lot of other beliefs that you have in order to take that belief on. And we're all naturally conservative in this regard. We don't want to overturn all of our beliefs or many of our beliefs in order to accommodate this new one. Another condition that a belief or an idea must meet is that a true belief must meet the can condition as well. It has to help us deal with the new situation. So this is a very important couple of conditions that we apply to new information, and it helps us to evaluate whether or not we are going to accept something as true. Let me give you an example of this conservative, right, small c conservative approach to truth. Let's say that I catch the bus every day at 5 o'clock. And one day the bus doesn't come and I need to figure out why. Well, two ideas might occur to me. Today might be a holiday and buses don't run on holidays. Or it might be that all buses have miraculously been turned into refrigerator magnets. Now let's say I accept as true, or I propose as true, the idea that all buses are now refrigerator magnets. This belief will likely fail both the CMD and the CAN conditions. Why? Well, let's take the CMD first. Consider how disturbing the magnet belief would be to some very basic ideas I have about buses and objects in general. Right? As fun as it might be to believe this, seriously accepting it would cause a lot of cognitive dissonance and a lot of disruption. Well, let's take the other condition, the CAN condition, right? How does believing that that the buses have turned into magnets would help me assimilate this new situation, right? How does it fit with what I already believe, and does it help me navigate from where I am, right, stuck at a bus stop, to where I need to be? It doesn't help me very much in my situation. It doesn't help me assimilate the facts of my new situation. Right? The idea that the bus is magically turned into a refrigerator magnet is not easily accepted as a novel idea, so it's rejected. So to give a summary of James's view so far, we can cope with the change of ideas that we find, the change of beliefs. We can cope with them by accepting true ideas as the ones which actually work. There are plural truths in our life experience, not one truth. And it's not the case that all of the truths that we experience in the plural are adding up to one truth. That's not something we find in experience. All the truths that we come across are contextual, right? They happen in situations when we're doing this or that, or in this mood or that, or, with a personality or history that we have. The truths that we have are functions of our personality, right? These truths are happening to us, to me as a particular individual with ideas and beliefs that I have. Right? So truth is more truthing, right? Truthing is a function that weaves new beliefs and ideas with old beliefs. No truth that I have I can really consider to be a final truth, because experience is constantly new, constantly novel. The last section of the essay I'd like to talk about is about temperament. And James raises this question in other writings, but he essentially recognizes that often the difference between philosophical approaches comes down to something more than just their arguments, their principles, their logic, their axiomatic beginnings. They come down to what it's like to be a sort of person who believes that kind of philosophy. It's more like seeing how different people view the whole world, he says, to see what they value most. And when you see what people value and what's motivating them, you can see that a lot of people with these various philosophies, empiricistic, rationalistic, and so forth, are often divided between two very different basic kinds of temperament. Some want to seek knowledge or seek truth, and others want to shun or avoid error. James talks about this in The Will to Believe. He says, we may regard the chase for truth as paramount and the avoidance of error as secondary, or we may, on the other hand, treat the avoidance of error as mere imperative and let truth take its chance. We must remember these feelings of our duty about either truth or error are in any case only expressions of our passional life. Right? That's from The Will to Believe. So when you think about this, the rationalists that James has been sort of critiquing here, or defending himself against, rationalists presume that there's something like a truth in general, that such a truth is singular, it's unchanging, it's total. And we seek this truth by detaching ourselves from our bodies, from our emotions, right? We're striving to become pure spectators, intellectuals, to remove ourselves from the stream of experience. So the rationalist places avoid error higher than seek truth, right? I mean, everyone is seeking truth in a certain sense, but James means seeking truth in a kind of sense of adventure, exploration, willing to take risks and change your mind. Rationalists are shunning error. They want the most secure, error-free foundation possible. They want a truth that once they find it, it will never change. Pragmatists have the opposite temperament. They begin with active living experience, which is not detached. It should resemble the lives that we have. It has a passionate side, it has a reflective or intellectual side. And in the course of living, the pragmatist finds that there are truths in the plural and in various contexts. And we call the ideas or beliefs true because they help us navigate through life successfully. They do not correspond to a reality that's somehow elsewhere, nor do they simply cohere perfectly rationally with everything else we already believe. We care about truth because truth functions for us. We put it to work. Now, the last thing to mention here has to do with the objection that pragmatism here is a kind of relativism. James was very aware of this objection. All of the pragmatists were. And the objection goes something like this. Well, look, if true beliefs are what's useful, and I get to determine what's useful based on my life and my needs and my desires, then any belief that I declare useful is true. And anything I say is good. Right? And so basically we're off to the races. There's no truth outside of the individual. There's no reality or good outside of the individual. This is just a relativism. The question is, what can the pragmatist say in defense? So James points as a defense back to those conditions I mentioned earlier, the CMD and the CAN conditions. Any new belief that we take on, if you just look at how beliefs work for you and for me and for everybody, most everybody, any new belief must pass a relatively strict test, right? It has to accommodate our experience, which includes things that are not under our total control, and it needs to fit with the body of our previous beliefs, many of which are quite vital to us. As James puts it, quote, "The greatest enemy of any one of our truths may be the rest of our truths." And so what James is saying here is that the more useful a belief has been for me and the more variously connected it is with other beliefs that I hold, the more I will resist giving it up. So it's not really willy-nilly up to us what we can believe or think is good or think is true. There's an awful lot we come to the situation with already. So I like to call this a kind of perspectivism without relativism. We can't believe anything that we want. Relativism is a luxury that we just can't live with. We can't survive it, really. Pragmatism admits that there's no God's eye view to reality or truth or about things that are absolutely unchangeably true. But through the fact that we share perspectives and we have selves which are interdependent, we have an enormous amount of overlap with one another. And there's really not a good reason to suppose that we're forever going to be separated or separated on all issues and without consensus. Most people agree on most things. It's just that the things we disagree with get the most light and generate the most heat and can often cause even violence and the divorce of human interaction. So for James, one example of this is language, which is a common project, right? It's something that we have necessarily in common. And in addition to language, our stock of truths is just that way as well. So we have to assimilate new ideas to that stock. We're all conservatives about change, and we're already engaged in interdependent social projects about things and values that we share. So this ends the first lecture on James's chapter 2 from his book Pragmatism, and I hope it will lead to some good discussion. Thanks for watching.